means that the fracking process actually contributes rather than reduces this transition to a low-carbon economy. However, I do think, to be a bit technical from my own area of understanding the science policy process, that fracking, in the same way as climate change or issues of peak oil and energy security, must be viewed from what I call a post-normal science context. What I mean by that, in the context where the risks are high and there's uncertainty and controversy, we are not dealing with the normal scientific process. The message of post-normal science is that policy-relevant science is affected by uncertainties, value commitments and political judgment, and is particularly suited to cases such as fracking. And if you want an example of post-normal science in action, it's how the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reaches its judgments. This is post-normal science, or Mode 2 science, in which interdisciplinarity is key, facts and values are irreducibly connected, and we are no longer simply dealing with cost-benefit analysis, but a much more complex combination and irreducibly political decision of facts, values and risks. In terms of risks, we have the precautionary principle, which to me should be the guiding principle in enabling us to make a decision pro or against fracking. And of course, the issue here with the precautionary principle is to prove safety as opposed to proving harm. The key here is to act in advance of conclusive scientific evidence or conclusively establishing causal links between some proposed activity and harm. When an activity raises threats of harm to the human health or the environment, precautionary measures should be in place, even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. In this context, the proponent of an activity, rather than the public, should bear the burden of proof, to prove safety as opposed to demonstrate harm. And in my view, on this basis, there is insufficient proof of safety in fracking for the process to be endorsed. As the wise St. Thomas Aquinas once said, it is better for a blind horse to be slow. Where we lack full scientific or technological proof about a process that may have potential threats or harm, it is legitimate to err on the side of caution and not to proceed with a proposed development. I do want to make some comments about local democracy before concluding on the issue of political leadership. I do think the issue of fracking has raised serious issues in terms of many members of our community feeling let down by our political process, concerns that their areas are being sacrificed for some other good. Certainly here I draw upon my own research and why people object to renewable energy proposals. There is a strong feeling that people are affected for some other benefit outside their community. And what I'd like to point out from my own research on people objecting to wind farms in particular, and this is here to interject into this debate, objectors to such proposals are not NIMBYs. They often make legitimate arguments around the issue of democratic legitimacy. They raise the issue of local community benefit. In fact, they should be viewed positively as part of a process of engagement to co-create solutions. And indeed, there is a latent willingness, certainly from my own research, of informed communities to do their bit and to countenance greater changes in lifestyle if given robust and clear policy and political leadership. Unfortunately, in the issue of fracking here on this island, there's a lot of fear in our communities, based on the not unreasonable sense that our desire for fossil fuels, our society's addiction to them, will remain riding roughshod over the legitimate objections, and in particular the stakeholders in tourism, farming and agriculture. Objectors should be viewed as legitimate, included in the democratic decision-making process, and be viewed as making potentially important contributions. I want to make a few closing remarks on the issue of political leadership. And in conclusion, to return to my initial point concerning the inescapable political nature of any decision-making process about fracking, the decision-making process ought to be as open, democratic and as transparent as possible. This is an issue of political leadership, and one in which this Assembly and other democratically elected institutions here and in the Republic of Ireland need to demonstrate. Leadership is not about taking the easy option. It's about listening and acting in the best interest of all those affected now and in the future. In relation to fracking, there are sufficient environmental, economic and health risks associated with it for it not to be considered based upon the precautionary principle. There are many questions about, indeed, the economic viability of the industry and serious questions about how a dash for shale gas could undermine renewable energy investment. If we are serious about tackling climate change, growing the green, sustainable economy across this island, harnessing the engineering skills of our population, as well as the abundant sources of renewable energy around us, create green, non-outsourceable jobs, especially in the hard-pressed construction sector, and begin the decade-long process of investing in an all-island smart electric grid, the direction of travel indicated by giving the green light to fracking is the wrong signal to give. It signals an inability to think beyond fossil fuels, a sense of business as usual, precisely at the time when what we need in the face of the economic and climate crisis we face is bold, innovative thinking outside the box. I fear that our addiction to fossil fuels, the default conservatism of administrations, especially the financial agencies of the state, both sides of the border, the real pressure of short-term thinking on politicians to do something about joblessness, for example, will prevent and delay genuine, innovative political decisions. And let me be clear, and I speak as much to those against fracking as to local politicians and decision-makers on this point, it is not enough simply to say no. In my view, given the serious issues fracking raises about our future energy economy, for politicians to reject fracking is a necessary but not sufficient condition to warrant or justify that decision. Given business as usual is not, in my view, an option, and the pressing need to decarbonise the economy and make the transition to a low-energy economy as quickly as possible, it is incumbent upon politicians who reject fracking to propose genuine, low-carbon, sustainable and economic energy models. To my mind, this would be a real game-changer, and indeed reflect the words of Albert Einstein, who said, and I quote, "The significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking in which we created them." So, from a political and democratic point of view, what fracking presents is an opportunity for local politicians here in this Assembly to chart a new vision for Northern Ireland, one that listens to all the available evidence, the arguments from a scientific and technical analysis of the pros and cons, listen to the genuine concerns of local people and other stakeholders. Supporting fracking is the easy option politically. It fits with the business-as-usual paradigm, delivers some short-term benefits, but at potentially great and long-term costs. Leadership is about knowing the way, showing the way and going the way. I fear that if fracking proceeds, we'll be following the logic of the ancient Chinese saying, and here I conclude, Basil. If you keep going the way you're going, you're going to get to where you're headed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, John. We will pretty close to 10 minutes. We will try and do that, but we will give people the chance to go back in and actually have an interactive debate. Just coming up to talk to us now, a presentation, we've got some slides, is Professor Peter Stiles, who is a Professorial Research Fellow in Applied and Environmental Geophysics at the University of Kiel. But before I hand this over to you, I have to tell you that I went down to Dublin for the Euroscience Week, and I had to sit in the aisles to listen to what Peter and some others had to say. The most important thing about all of it is the organisers at the time misunderstood the interest that the general public have in the issue, and I agree that it is not, as John said, it is not just down to a fairly narrow agenda, but to a much wider discussion. And on that basis, I'm really looking forward to what you have to say, Peter.
Thanks very much, Basil. Thanks, John, for that incisive view of the political landscape. I have a slightly different way I put it to my students. It's a triangle, right? The top left is technically, can you do it? The right hand is economically, can you afford it? The bottom corner is, will anybody let you? Okay? And that anybody can be government, it can be legislators, it can be the public. Right? And that pertains not just to shale gas, disposal of radioactive waste, sequestration of CO2. Right? All of these things, you need to satisfy all three of those, and it's a very difficult job. Okay, I have this nightmare where I meet an alien somewhere down the line, and he says to me, you had all this wonderful oil stuff, and you burnt it when you could have done something better with it. Right? That's very true. I believe that this is actually too valuable a product to use to burn. But we are where we are. Right? I just put that one in. I don't actually live in London. I thought you might like to see that one. Okay, you'll forgive. The first bit of this is Jumping Jack Flash. It's the gas. He'll tell you what era I come from. This is the Russian gas network. Okay? Gas comes from the Stockman field and various other fields all the way across Europe, all the way down to Turkey, all the way across Kazakhstan. Some of it comes into the UK. Okay? Gas also comes from Norway. That's probably okay. In the USSR, no one gets the chance to vote on what happens there. Okay? People can't even demonstrate there. And we bring gas thousands of kilometres to the UK. And in transit, that gas leaks at more than 1.5% of methane, which is 75 times as bad as CO2. Transporting the gas into our country or anybody else's country from Russia has a higher carbon footprint than burning it. Okay? The other place we get it from is Qatar, and we ship it in tankers through the Gulf of Aden, where I did my PhD, where it's subject potentially to being hijacked by Somali pirates. That's not energy security. This is a prediction of where we will get our energy. Things like coal at the bottom are decaying, things like gas are increasing. But this picture shows our net import-export plot. We used to import a lot. There was a time when we exported a lot. Now we import by pipeline much more than we export, because the North Sea is running out of gas. Gas this is UK-wide, so you have to temper it, it's not just Northern Ireland. 47% of our generation power, and 70% of our domestic heating